What happens when a guy from the city accidentally contacts a guy from the country? It's not what you think. They strike up a conversation and same difference is created. JD and Kory talk the whole gamut of life as they each see it through the prism of race. One is a 6'4" black man and one is a 5'4" white man. Tune in and find out which is which. Agree or disagree, they will make you think, strike emotional chords, and more. Stick around. You might just learn something. Welcome to Same Difference with your hosts, JD and Kory. We're sharing our stories and how our stories impacted our approach to life. We take our perspectives into having dialogue about real life topics. Welcome back, everybody. It's been a little bit since we've talked to you. Thanksgiving has happened, but in the intervening time, I'm Kory, and this is JD, the doctor.
Hey, Kory. It has been a little while since you and I have recorded, and I'm excited about this one today because we have some responses that we received from questions of those that have been listening, and this is what it's all about, to gain some more experience that shows that we are connected with the people that are listening so that we can give greater feedback to what they're interested in as well as we talk about our unique journeys. So,
all right. I've got a question for you. Where are you now?
I am back in the loo, baby. And
does that mean you're back in University City?
I am technically I'm outside of University City, but I am close enough to where I spend a good amount of time there. So yes, in my heart and of hearts, anytime I'm in the loo, I'm back in the U as well.
And what's that on your shirt, real quick?
Oh, this happens to be the reunion shirt from the first episode we actually recorded. Brought it back out because I'm back here and just celebrating being back in U City. Although I must admit, when I got back here and it was fucking 30 degrees, I gotta be the only idiot that goes to Florida from April to November instead of from November to April. But hey, it is what it is.
You got your migration pattern all messed up, my friend.
Yes, sir. Won't be the first time I made mistakes in my life.
Absolutely, positively forgiven. All right. You told me you got some mail. Talk to me. Tell me about all this.
So Patty, a listener who I've sent thanks out before previously, called and said, JD, I would like to know from your parents' standpoint, how they feel about the decisions that they made to move you to the places in which you grew up as a minority amongst your peers. Would they done anything different? Do they have any regrets? Kind of generalized, talk about some of that and how that went down. And so I was able to speak to my father. My mom is moving to Costa Rica to get the heck up out of the United States.
So she's the smart one moving south during the winter, huh?
Yeah, during the winter for sure. She went way south. And so, but I'm pretty sure if I need to bring some changes to this in the next episode or two, I will. But I'm pretty sure I know a lot of what my mom thinks about me and the way that I was raised. So if you want to start, or I can start, either way.
Oh, go ahead. Tell me, because I'll respond after. I'm interested in hearing about how your parents viewed this move.
So definitely from the standpoint of, did they make any mistake? Would they have made a different move looking back at it today? Absolutely, unequivocally, no. They are generally happy with how my sisters and I have turned out from a social experiment almost, wise, right? My mom and I went to my best friend's families, who I've known since, we moved next to them when I was 4, um, for Thanksgiving, and and his mom cried that my mom was moving to Costa Rica. Now she was a little inebriated, so she had some help there, but there's still the love. Like my mom and sister went there before I got an hour before I got there. They were already there. So there was, and this is a fun family that talks loud, talks crap, like we said last time, but also just shows a beautiful amount of love. And so she was, we're family to them. And I know my mom loves that experience, and having had that experience for me and my friends. And so, from that social standpoint, no. I think where they have some trepidation, or see, I tried to use a big word of the day by Kory May there, um, uh, where they have a little bit of the concern has to do with how they raised me from an education standpoint. Both of them went to prestigious universities. Both of them, my dad, Ivy League, my mother, the local Washington University and Oberlin and all these big name Temple for medical school. Like they went to the creme de la creme. And I, going through high school, was like, hey, I don't even want to go to college. Like, you know, so um, my dad spoke briefly about that. If I had to do something different, I might have handled how you were educated differently. If I had any regrets, it was not necessarily things that he could control, but we got into some more trouble with the law than what he had anticipated, right? And he didn't really think about that happening when he was making the decision he was making. And so some of that was conditions in which the choices a lot of young Black youth seem to feel they have uh, lead to I can make money better through an illegal source than not, and I need money, and so that became a source of a lot of the people that I knew growing up, and I participated to the level of trying to use my white skin to protect that, um, and we got into guns and my parents are absolutely against guns, and so am I now. But we did go through a phase where, right, everybody in this sort of post colors movie,
Yeah.
getting into local gangs and thought that we needed to reside. Even felt like we might even be tough because we had guns. And I'm glad that for me, for my best friend Shondo, and I, it was short lived, and we didn't get into major trouble where we could have been spending a lot of years in jail. So, from that standpoint, I know that they're grateful, but that certainly brought some very stressful times to their doorsteps. Um,
Let me ask you a question before you proceed on a little bit. So, you mentioned the movie Colors, and I remember that as being at the time controversial.
mhm,
Those kinds of movies, I would say like second generation black exploitation, if
mhm.
you will. Um, do you think that they shed an accurate eye on urban life?
So interestingly, I'm going to bring in Willie D on this, who was one of a rapper from one of my favorite groups growing up, the Ghetto Boys, and he and a young other rapper who teaches at I want to say an Ivy League school named D1, who teaches hip hop at this. They were having a discussion about how, like, the framework in which you don't hear the context of the entire story, you pick and choose what you do and you sensationalize that.
Right.
And I think that happened with colors. I met a guy that was a former probation officer for the youth back then, and he was a consultant on colors. Some of the people that were making the movie had a genuine hope that they would show something that would scare people away from, this is not the way that we need to go. Not only that, but it would expose the corrupt cop system and how so much was manipulated through COINTELPRO practices. They didn't get to do it exactly the way they wanted to that level, because as we've talked about in previous, Hollywood has a finger in the game. Go ahead.
So you used the term COINTELPRO. Would you like to tell our listeners what that is?
So, as much as we love to talk about conspiracy theories today, COINTELPRO was an example of a real conspiring of the government and leaders, both political and in police forces and FBI and whatnot, led by, designed by J. Edgar Hoover, to infiltrate two things. One, to infiltrate the Black community to be what we have today in a very sort of Black on Black crime type of manner. And two, to stop the rise of any Black messiah, any Black leadership. And we can go down a very big rabbit hole about that. And if you want to know more, I'm a plug Race for What right now for that one. But COINTELPRO was a serious manipulation. And I will say one thing. I was in, I was substitute teaching while I was going through my doctorate. And these students were in there, and I happened to have an art class, and they had the glue guns, and they were chasing each other around, pretending to be Crips and Bloods in the class. And they were in the middle school, I think, 8th grade. And I stopped them and I said, hey, all right. They said, all right. Sorry, Mr. Mass. We know you don't want us doing that. I said, I'm going to let you do it. All you got to do is answer one question. Who was the first ones to write gang language, gang writing on walls in somebody else's neighborhood? Tell me that. And they said, oh, that's easy. That was the Crips. And I was like, no, it wasn't. Oh, yeah, you're right. You're right. That was the Bloods. No, it wasn't. It was the FBI. It was the local police force, right? The level in which the manipulation took place. And that was shown somewhat in colors, right? The police dropped off rival gang members in a rival neighborhood, hoping that they would stir up beef, making it look like they had just done some harm to somebody, and doing all of these manipulative things, which, you light fire to a dry brush. If you create this world of scarcity and you light fire to that dry brush, yes, there's going to be taking out your anger and frustration over your life on somebody else. And and the easiest person any of us, white, Black, and different, can do harm to and get away with is you.
Right? Someone that looks like you.
No.
Looks like me.
Somebody looks like me, the police are going to come looking for you.
Right.
I cause harm to somebody that looks like you, or you cause harm to somebody that looks like you. No. You can get away with that much more. If it's not simple, moving on.
So also for our listeners, COINTELPRO is an acronym that stands for Counterintelligence Program.
Yes.
So COINTELPRO.
Yes. Thank you for that.
No, I'm just helping.
Word of the day by Kory May. Look him up and follow him. But no, so So from that standpoint, it was sensationalized in a way that sort of what people in LA, having spent time with some OGs out there, as they would call them, original gangsters of those Crips and Blood sets, they call them side busters. Anybody outside of LA that claims to be a Crip or a Blood is considered by LA side busters. They also see them as very dangerous because you're only sensationalizing what you hear on the news, what you see in the movies and in the music and all of that, and you're not connected to the source of what it was originally meant to be, which was to come together, to bond together as a community. Without the influence of COINTELPRO, it had a very different, it was the bastard child of, and there's a Bastards of a Party is a great great documentary on this, but it came from the dismantling of the Black Panther Party that Crips were formed.
I was going to ask you about that in a minute.
Yes. So
so we're opening up some doors for future episodes to dig deep into those.
Absolutely. But without that knowledge, my parents didn't understand nor had no idea that anything like this would transpire. Certainly has seen and knew that there would be some risk of racism still continuing to the level in which it continued in a very different form in the 80s through today. It's been eye-opening for us all as we go through the journey. So
I kind of want to make this point, and we'll probably make this point abundantly clear as we move through the future. Some of the episodes that you are hearing about from us show the duality of Black life. There are places where things are excellent and phenomenal, and there are places that are less so. And we don't need to generalize that the aspects of Black life that aren't positive are just what Black culture is. It is not a monolithic thing, and it is certainly not wholly negative. I want to make sure that we understand that, especially if you listen to our previous episode about the word motherfucker. Black life is not all motherfucker.
Right. And in that, though, I also hope that we can see the level of humanity that exists, even when in areas in which we think it doesn't exist or have been sensationalized for the level of violence, poverty, and whatnot, that we can start to open our eyes to it not being a part of truly Black culture in a way that hasn't, without the manipulation, without being in this system, what does Black culture look like? And I've talked to many Black folks that don't really know that either. And it's hard to know what you don't know. So it's not like they're also admitting that at times. But yeah, it's a lot to untangle. And I look forward to you and I just doing our part to share and shed some light and bring forth some level of understanding and humanity that can exist that goes beyond the level of melanin in our skin.
Oh, very true. The focus too often, Hollywood sensationalizes, and we know this, and the media, although we are now considered part of the media, has this tendency to hyperinflate, to make certain things bigger and worse than necessary. I remember seeing Straight Outta Brooklyn with Matty Rich in in Washington, D.C., and it was the early 90s, how stressful it was. I'm in Northwest Washington, D.C., which is affluent. There's very little bad stuff that happens in Northwest DC, and it's upper Northwest DC, right below Chevy Chase. Not the actor, but the part of Washington DC that borders Bethesda. Very wealthy community, and I remember walking out with after having seen this with some white friends, and they were all really tense and jittery about it. And they were all worried that something was going to happen to them. And I said, we're in a wealthy part of Washington, D.C. Nothing is going to happen to you. And I said, because again, much like what you said, if anything happens to you, the police in both Washington, D.C. and in Chevy Chase and in Bethesda are all going to be looking for the perpetrator, and it's not going to go unsolved. This isn't going to be a red ball or that people are like, oh my gosh, they got away with it. No, someone will be brought to justice, and just need to understand that. And to think that we spoke about that, or that I spoke about things like that 30 years ago, and we're still seeing the echoes, is kind of stunning. Anyway, let's get back to you for a minute on St. Louis. So you were in a stage where you ran the streets a little bit, and you've decided that wasn't for you. What made you understand that wasn't for you? Was it Shondo?
No, I think it was as I was, well, one, I think Nelly's career saved a lot of us from that. So the timing of that also helped, right? I ended college at 24 years old. I had 3 freshman years of college. I just really love to learn in college. And, so that's partly also going back to the question of Patty, that's partly where my parents felt like they could have done better or should have done better, is helping me in my educational side of things. I completely disagree and do not have any regrets on how I used my education. But after I finished college, I started working at a bank within the first 6 months, and within the first 6 months after college, and within the first 8 months after starting at the bank, I quit to become Nelly's business manager. So that level of ability to provide jobs and other outlets really got a lot of them out of thinking of needing the streets to, and that was part of the goal of the St. Lunatics and Nelly. I mean, we had different views on how to empower people versus just give them a job, but that is what took us out of a lot of that. And that goes to the whole point. People don't choose selling drugs or doing illegal crimes 99 times out of 100 because it's cool, as much as, and although it's been sensationalized, so it does start to feel that way, which is part of a problem, but also because they feel, even if it's true or not, if you don't know the opportunities exist, if we haven't developed a culture that says, hey, this is easier to do, not you have to overcome this to do, but makes it easier to do, then when you get the opportunities, you see the difference, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and so that was what really kind of got us a lot of it out of there. You know, I can remember people wanting to handle promoters that were using Nelly's name in a way that he definitely wasn't coming, and they were lying, and it still reflects bad on Nelly, like he didn't show up. And some of the street guys would be like, JD, let's roll. I like, yeah, that ain't my job no more. I'm not rolling. Matter
Right.
of fact, don't call me. Don't tell me. I gotta be the business person over here to handle the other side of that. So, yeah.
Wow. So when you were talking about the selling drugs and things like that, it sounds to me that that's more a function of economics.
Yes, for sure. I can remember the first close friend that did it was homeless for 7 days, had a newborn child, and hadn't eaten. And he got a 50 piece. That is the smallest next to just the user's portion that you could actually break up into of crack into different pieces and sell them and turn that into 100, and then he would take another 50 out of that and turn that into another 100 until he had enough from those, because he had to spend some around along the way, to turn that to buy 100 at a time and turn that, and to buy 200 at a time and turn that. And I remember the first time he had a $250 medical expense for his child. We thought it set him back to getting a 50 piece again. We thought he'd be crushed. He was happy as a pig in shit because he could actually pay for this thing.
Yeah.
Like, that was real. And I watched that and experienced that with him. That's a close brother, friend of mine who we've been through things together, fights and whatnot. And great times. I watched it. I learned more from him about business than I learned that was really applicable than I learned as an entrepreneur anyway, than I learned from St. Louis University. And I took the business finance program there. So yes, to go back to that, like, it was an economics thing for sure. For 95, nobody wants to be running from the police, really. I mean, it sounds cool when you get away and whoo, I did this. Nobody wants that shit.
Dig it.
Nobody wants a
Dig it.
life where the results tend to be jail or
Death.
otherwise. But
Yeah.
when you have a child on the way and you don't see any other way to get the money to support your family, and this way is presented so easily, then yes, of course, it's makes sense to go that route.
Interesting.
So what about you? I know we want to get to the other questions too, and we will go further down a lot of these other stories later. Your parents, do they have any regrets?
I
Do
don't
they?
I don't think so. I don't think they have any. Well, my dad's been gone. Dad's been deceased since 78. But um no, I don't think so. And even when I talk to my mom, who's now she's almost 96, the
Oh, hell yeah.
opportunities the opportunities that she saw that they saw in Iowa City were far greater than what what was available in Southern Illinois at that time. You're talking um, farming, and that was pretty much it. Farming, maybe you could get a something put together so you could have a general store. But my dad's hometown, definitely under 1,000 people, and that's that's not a lot. That's not a lot. I remember I haven't been back down to Olmsted in decades. Decades.
Was that predominantly Black, though, those 1,000 people, or that was?
You know what? I don't even know. Those are memories of me. I wasn't paying attention to race like that as a little kid.
Right.
Um, and I was innocent in that degree growing up in Iowa City. I saw black people, saw some black people, saw a lot of white people. And I thought everybody grew up that way. And
Right.
no, not everybody does. So as the family story goes, my dad is plowing behind a flatulent donkey, and he's like, life's got to be there's got to be something better than this. And he decides to get an education. And as I'd said before in a previous episode, he came here to the University of Iowa, became a he was one of the first two black men in the physical therapy department here. And he had two masters, one in physical therapy and one in special education. And the opportunities that came out of that were pretty good. You have to think that a physical therapist in the late 70s, or excuse me, in the late 60s, early 70s, and who was also into education as well, was going to be doing pretty well. So we have the house that I grew up in, and that was important and significant at the time. It still is important. It's and significant in our family. At the time that mom and dad bought the land and bought the house, two things were true. We were on the furthest. At one time we were the furthest west home in Iowa City, and now we're virtually downtown. That's one thing. Two, there was some discrimination because people didn't want to sell land to us. People didn't want to build the house with us. And we found patrons who were willing to sell the land to us, as well as people who were ready, willing, and able to build a sturdy home that's going to last for a long time. Educational opportunities, I have to say, as a person of color, as a black man, I want to live in a university town because, one, diversity of thought. There's always something to do. And the cyclical nature of education means that you're going to see people of all denominations, all stripes, if you will, all directions coming to your city. So there's a fresh infusion of thought every semester. And I love that. Yeah. At the same time, that churn it's easy to want to get away from that because you're like, dang, here we go again, another season, another fall semester, winter break, spring semester, summer break, summer school session 2, summer school session 3, another break, then it's fall semester again. It's a wonderful way to set your clock for education, and it's a kind of an hourglass of your life because there's always freshmen coming in the fall, and they keep getting younger and younger and younger, and these freshmen now are younger than my youngest children, and it's to me it's invigorating and exciting because, again, there's always an opportunity to learn. And right. I think that's been the fundamental backbone of my family is learning. And yeah, go ahead, please.
And so have they spoken to you about that decision? And were there things that they might have done differently ever? Did they ever speak on those?
The things that they may have talked about as having done differently, never. One thing that would have always worked well for them was to go to a college town. I could have been raised at the University of Illinois or right. University of Pittsburgh or University of Virginia, as long as it was a university. I think that was the non-negotiable. Iowa City's it's been home, and it was close enough to my grandparents where Dad could get down there in an 8-hour drive, or 4.5-hour drive, if you will, because it's a little further. It's beyond Cape Girardeau and Cape Girardeau, Missouri. So it's further south. So let's say 6.5 hours.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and that was a thing. I don't think there was ever any regret of having moved here. I think they looked at university towns as places of opportunity.
Right.
Diversity of thought, opportunity. You're going to see what's coming down the pike a lot faster than many of your peers.
Right.
If my cousins who may have been down there, who were down there, my sister cousins, sorry, my slightly older cousins left there at some point. They went off to college or joined the military, and they found themselves in education as well. So that was, if there was going to be a family occupation, I would think it was education.
Right.
Some people are doctors, where that's their family lineage. They're just doctors, or they're lawyers. For our family, it was teaching. I missed the teaching. Well, maybe I guess you could say I'm teaching now.
There you go. Your kernel popped a little later, that's all.
Thanks, I think.
Let's look at what the other two questions we have. People that I believe you're familiar with.
Right. Do you want to read them?
Sure, I can read them. From Cheryl.
Oh, yes. Our friend Cheryl in Canada. We're international, baby. We're international.
And hey, we're doing well in South Africa. So that is, we've gotten good feedback from our Spotify and other, tracking that we are doing pretty well down in South Africa. So hopefully we can get some shared experience from there as well. So
remember, we got to get David Hasselhoff status. We'll be big in Belgium too.
There you go. So hi there. I'm listening to your first podcast. I must say, great introduction to the future endeavors. I do have a couple of questions. JD, if I may call you by your first name, you are reminiscing and mentioned an incident regarding Nelly and how fast he was. He was on his way home, and you mentioned the time. The reason it caught my attention was the infinitesimal, that I hope I said that right, shift in the flow of the telling. My question being, were there curfews in place for young people in your city, or parental curfews? There were curfews in place. In U City, we were pretty relaxed as far as, the community knew each other. One of the enforcers being, police, they grew up in U City often. So there was a lot of, you could get away with it kind of with the, talking to. So parental curfews were much more enforced at that time. And so for those of you who may have missed that episode but are hearing this one, I spoke about how effing fast Nelly was. And we lived a good mile or maybe a little over a mile away, and he could get home in 6 minutes easily to catch Sanford and Son. That's how he would let me know he made it home. He'd call me up and have it blasting on it, which you could hear the dun, 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 so that was it.
That's an iconic soundtrack. If you've ever heard Sanford and Son, you know exactly what he's talking about.
That is my ringtone to this day. It is my favorite show of all time. Fred is my favorite character of all time. And yes. So, Kory, later in the podcast, when it was your turn for incidental revelations, you mentioned the need to coach some of your friends. Can you please explain on that?
Oh, as a matter of fact, yes. There is a level of innocence that we had as children that we were all kids. And it wasn't until somebody told us that we were different that we started to see each other as different. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't necessarily remember an individual who said, "Oh, Kory, you're black." But at some point or another, this changed behaviors of my peers. And sometimes we have to coach. I had to coach people and say, I can't do that. I can't act up in public the same way that you do, because everybody's going to remember me. Everybody remembers the bacon bit in the egg salad, right? So I stand out in a crowd more often than not, and I would have to pull my friends away and say, hey, we can't get away with that, or I can't get away with that. And if you're going to continue to do that, I got to go. And sometimes that worked as a deterrent, but other times it didn't. And I had to find my way home in certain situations. Yeah. Walk home or make sure that I was nowhere near the shenanigans that were about to go off. Just I couldn't do that. And then again, this podcast in many respects is doing that same level of coaching by sharing my experiences. We are coaching people on how to relate to each other, not only in the differences, but in our shared humanity.
Sure.
Now, I got this one. JD, still in the high school confidential mode. You haven't talked about your university experiences. Will this be for a future cast?
And the very short answer to that is abso-effing-lutely. We are going to talk about our college experiences because there is a lot around that time, you know, from going from childhood to adulthood. How do you want to represent yourself? How are you starting to interact with others that are, you know, going to be future adults and trying to establish themselves as what they want to be as adults? So yes, we will be discussing quite a bit of that. Kory, you talked about dating or lack thereof. Was there an unspoken but acknowledged understanding that interracial relationships were not acceptable both at high school and the university level? And so these are great questions, Cheryl, by the way. We hope you continue to listen and ask.
Yes, there was an unspoken but acknowledged understanding that interracial relationships were not acceptable. Even in the 80s, they were still kind of frowned upon.
Yeah.
And in the 90s in college, yes, but there was a starting to be a lessening of that. It was not as frowned upon, and even now it's a whole lot less frowned upon than it was 30 years ago. So yes, there was an understanding, and like I said, for the big events in high school, like homecoming and prom and things like that, I was always pretty much a safe date. He'd go, he'd show you a good time, you go out to dinner, You go stand with your people, he'll stand with his people. Nothing happens other than a couple of dances and some photographs, and that's it. Whereas I have some white counterparts who were doing all manner of things, and well, it's acceptable.
Right.
Now, let's see. We've got another set. Thank you, Cheryl, for your questions. Now we've got another question from Justy.
Yes.
And let's
I
see.
believe this one's geared towards you because you spoke about this.
Yeah. So do you want to ask that so then I can answer it?
I will do that. Do you think that being funny, in quotation marks, was a conscious decision?
Well, I always think I'm funny, and there's no need for air quotes.
I agree, at least from a appearance standpoint. Go ahead.
Oh, you got jokes. You got jokes. You got jokes. Yes, funny was a conscious decision because you disarm people with humor. It's hard to kick somebody's ass if they're making you laugh.
Right.
And that disarming neutralizes in many respects the threat. So I'm not seen as a giant threat as long as I'm making you laugh. Right?
Right.
If I'm making you laugh, you lower your inhibitions and you feel like you can trust me, which makes me feel safe. And feeling safe among dangerous people or people who seem to be dangerous. These are some high school guys with whom I attended high school, and they were country folk. Being able to disarm them so that I could go into the bathroom without getting my head flushed in a toilet or getting beaten up 6-on-1 in a bathroom. That's I was going to do whatever I needed to do in order to survive.
Yeah, you become endearing, and that is absolutely necessary in that time. And those are real fears because it did happen. And so, yeah, thank you for sharing that one. And thanks, Justy, for that question.
I'm sure you had some similar incidents where you had to be funny as well, right? Being the white guy, the only and the other.
I think for me, in the sense of there's bullies in every shade, and at every high school.
Right.
I think what it did for me when people wanted to pick on me is if I saw the same flaw and could make fun of it in myself, I could dismantle somebody wanting to try and use that to target me. Right. I'm short. That was pretty obvious. So, I liken it to the movie where Steve Martin played in Roxanne, and he had this giant nose, and he went off and made funnier jokes than anybody who was trying to be malicious towards him, right? Mm-hmm. And you can dismantle that in that way. It does become a great tool for bringing a level of camaraderie instead of a level of conflict, and
right,
avoids a lot of harm that way.
Right.
Yeah. So
great. At the same time, there's a fine line between doing that voluntarily and doing it because it's demanded of you, right? We've all seen the Westerns where the bad guys are like, dance, varmint, and they shooting at their 6 guns at your feet. That's a different situation than this one.
Right. Without a doubt.
It's nuanced, but boy, oh boy, there's those times when that humor gets you out of situations and you're like, I made it home. I made it home today. tomorrow we're going to have to do the same thing over and over again to get home safely.
And the flip side of that too, though, Kory, if I've gotten us, at least with authority, police in general, tried to make jokes and they go, "Oh, smart ass, huh?" I go, "Fuck, that didn't work." We're in more trouble now thanks to your big mouth. Guess we'll be spending the night in the holding cell tonight, buddy.
Yeah, all he had to do was just keep his damn mouth shut.
Yeah, all he had to do is shut the F
up. Awesome.
So yes, it was a conscious decision. Didn't always bring forth the greatest results.
I'm willing to bet that there will probably be another episode that's based on some of these questions. And for all of our listeners, go ahead, continue to ask questions. If you've had any questions at all over these first 8 or 9 episodes, send in a question. We're glad to answer them.
I am going to certainly expound on 2 of them together: college years and Patty's question about regrets. For sure. During the young adult years of my life, left some of the greatest room for my own personal regrets. And like I said, I'm sure brought some fear and concern and stress to my parents during that time. And we'll get into those at later dates. Speaking of later dates, it is the 12th of December when you will be hearing this episode, and we are going to take a bit of a break for everybody to enjoy their holidays season, and for us to also kind of plan and prepare for what a next season, if you would, or expanded on this season of Same Difference looks like. We want to continue to develop greater content. We want to continue to expand upon the stories. This type of what we are, let the main thing be the main thing, if you would. We're going to keep this up, and the stories are going to get better and better as adults.
And we're going to start to bring in outside issues and tie them into our experiences and look at them, analyze them through our life experiences and wisdom. Remember, race, JD and I are standing on opposite sides of a fence. He grew up in a black neighborhood. I grew up in a white neighborhood. And we're going to see this issue of race while we're standing on either side of that. And the cool thing is, we're talking over the fence about the fence.
Mm-hmm.
He might need a step stool, but that's okay.
I might. There's also holes in the fence, so I can see through those holes. Quite a bit.
We are so thankful for every one of you that are out there listening to our podcast. And we couldn't do this without VPR Radio, the goddess Kiana, and the DJ FMI. We couldn't do it without them, and we certainly couldn't do it without you.
Yes. So we will be discussing in later terms, and we have a few minutes now, but we do hope that everybody enjoys this holiday season. I have resented American culture's time where they have said on news and other forms that this is the time of year where we think of others, because that should be something that we think about all the time. So I do want us to think of others. If you have sort of conditioned yourself to think of others more so at this time, and for those of us that really hope that we're making a change and want to think of others throughout, let's continue to do so and not shy away from it during this time. Um, uh, for me coming into this season, I had to go through my sort of militant pushback on, oh, I'm not supporting these commercialized, things to, you know what? Hey, the system is set up for us to have more time to spend with family and friends, families. I'm going to enjoy that part of it. And so, you can do both. You can still not like what the commercialization is about or the way we were taught about some of these holidays, and yet still find some enjoyment in sharing that time with others, bridging some gaps, if you may, across and through this fence.
Take the opportunity to share this podcast with your friends. And maybe it'll spark a discussion among you and yours. If there's something that makes you laugh, let us know. If there's something that makes you think, like Justy and Patty and Cheryl, send us a note. We want to hear from you, and just more than anything, continue the dialogue beyond this place.
Yes. So on that note, January 9th, we will be coming out with another episode, number 10. If I may dive into a little bit of numerology for a second, 9 is a cycle. That is why the next number is 0, and or the next number is 1, because 1 and 0 equal 1, and all numbers add up to a number of 9, and you could go deep into that. But 9 is a cycle, and we went through one cycle, not purposely, sort of came out this way, based on when we started it and when we're deciding to take our break. And that's a good sign to me that we made it through one cycle, and we are going to recycle and start again in the coming new, I hate to call it a new year, but it is a calendar new year. So, yep, looking forward to seeing that. Please look us up, same difference life, and reach out to us at same difference broadcast at gmail.com. Once again, same difference life and same difference broadcast at gmail.com. And yeah, I'm looking forward to building with you, Kory. This has been a great experience of 9 episodes thus far. I look forward to what we can do to build an audience, and I look forward to what we can do to create better and better content.
Hey, speaking of better content, what's your opinion on sweet potato pie?
What is my opinion on sweet potato pie? It is one of
Yeah.
the greatest desserts of all time. It is a Muhammad Ali of desserts. And I love it even because you can make a very delicious sweet potato pie vegan, plant-based, without the butter. You can substitute that with some avocado oil or some other, margarine type substance that is still very tasty. Sugar, and you can make it sweet, and sweet potato pie can be enjoyed by all of us. So yeah, don't get me. I could do a whole episode on sweet potato pie.
I'm good with that. I want everybody to have that as a parting thought. If you've never had sweet potato pie, you can find it. It's available during the holiday season, and it should be available year-round. I endorse Patti LaBelle's sweet potato pie. I'm just saying, same difference.
Yes. What a way to end. Same difference on episode 9. Thank you all. Thank you, Kory. I'm JD, and we are out of here until January 9th. Thank you for tuning in to another inspiring episode of Same Difference. We hope this journey through unique connections and diverse perspectives has left you with fresh insights and a broader understanding of the world we share.
We're humbled by your support and enthusiasm for the incredible stories and discussions we've shared. And remember, our mission is to foster critical thinking, embrace new perspectives, and spark conversations that bring us closer to an equitable world.
So, if you've enjoyed our podcast, please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us. Your feedback means the world to us, and it helps us reach even more listeners.
And if you have a story to share or a topic you'd like us to explore, don't hesitate to get in touch. We're always looking for new voices and fresh perspectives to feature on Same Difference.
Until next time, remember that our shared humanity is our most powerful asset, and by working together, we can bring about positive change.
Stay curious, stay compassionate, and keep making a difference. Thank you for being a part of Same Difference.
Take care, everyone. See you in the next episode.